guys, it's Ty with Ty the Dog Guy on the Daily, and I want to talk today about electric training collars. Electric training collars can sometimes have a lot of controversy. What I'm referring to, if you're watching the video part, you're seeing the remote. What I'm referring to is a collar. They're called remote collars, shock collars, electric collars, e-collars. You're going to see them, kind of represented a number of different ways. But the bottom line is that the electric training collar is a tool that we really like. When I say we, I mean at my company we do a lot of really great things with it. And so the question I get often, and I kind of get it from two competing mindsets, is why do you use it? Now, one mindset that I get this from is the type of trainer that just uses kind of treats and whatnot and hugs and rainbows and kittens and things like that in order to get results. And the question is like, why would you use that? You're a monster. And then the other mindset I get is just somebody with an open mind that says, oh, interesting, okay, shock collar, e-collar, whatever. Now, why do you use that? And so I want to take a little bit of time today and discuss why I like it so much, why it's probably the most humane way to train a dog, and why it's very much misunderstood. And so like I say, at the root of why I like this tool is the fact that any healthy dog training program, any humane dog training program, any program that's worth its salt has to have some sort of consequence, right? Both negative and positive consequences. And so, positive consequences might be, a treat, a pat on the head, a good word, a toy, something like that. But there also needs to be negative consequences. Now, if you run into a dog trainer that tells you that's not the case, you need to run, because they are not up to date on like the latest science, how dogs learn, different quadrants of learning and things like that. But anyways, that's a story for another day. But anyways, there has to be some sort of physical communication. There has to be some sort of consequence in, for any living creature to learn, on both sides of the spectrum, both positive and negative. And so if we understand that at its root, and like I said, it's a very simple understanding, but it's one that's been kind of twisted a lot. But if we understand that at its root, then what we want to say, what I want to say at least, and this is why it kind of forms the foundation of my training, is if we're going to use some sort of consequence, what I want is something that's easy on me, easy on the dog. I want something that is leveraged, meaning I can use the least amount of it and gain the greatest results. I want something that at its core is humane and fair. And so when we put all these things together, that's where the electric collar comes in. Now, I always call it an e-collar and an electric collar, and sometimes sometimes I'll get a little bit of grief for that. But the reason I do is because back in the days when these started, and I remember the first time I used one of these was about 20 to 21 years ago. Back then, the collars had like 3 levels, high, higher, and highest. And they would just blast the dog. And it was a literal shock. It would shock the heck out of the dog. It was painful. The technology's changed a lot in the past 2 decades. And collars were around even before that, even before 21 years ago. They were around. But anyways, it's changed in the past 2-3 decades a lot to where now there's various levels. So when I have people feel it, they don't associate it with what they associate as shock. When people associate a shock, they're saying, they're thinking like that zap from, an electric fence around a cattle yard, or they're thinking of, touching a live wire. They're thinking of a big jolt. When in reality, the way the technology has gone, it's not like that. It's just this little kind of pulse. I use the word tickle because in reality it's very much like a tickle. But, it's a little bit annoying to the dog. It's not like the dog's like, ooh, thank you for the tickle. In certain cases, we can actually do that, but it is somewhat annoying. It's somewhat itchy. And that's all it really needs to be 99% of the time. There is 1% where, and that's a podcast for another day, where it needs to be higher and it needs to be stronger for various reasons. But the majority of the time, it's either somewhat pleasant because it's getting the dog's attention, or at its very worst, it's just like itchy or annoying, to kind of act as a deterrent for behavior. And so like I say, if we understand that there needs to be a deterrent, that there needs to be a negative, let's make it the easiest one possible. And because of the technology, that's what the electric collar is these days. It is the absolute least amount of pressure that we can use. There's no emotion involved. There's no anger involved. There's no strong force. There's no, there's none of this. All it is just this little sensation that, like I say, is either pleasant all the way down to slightly annoying. And to me, that's totally fair. That's what a correction should be. If my daughter, doesn't clean her room, the correction shouldn't be like, a beat down. It might be like, all right, you don't get to play with your iPhone tomorrow or something like that. It needs to be fair, but, nothing super harsh. So anyways, that's where the e-collar makes a great tool. So if we understand that, the question then comes, well, can you train without it? Do you really need it? Because, let's say you just don't like the idea or whatever. And I get that. If people don't like the idea, I do recommend that they, talk with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about with it. But in any case, the question comes up of like, why do you actually need this? Couldn't you accomplish the same thing with other ways? And the answer is yes. Again, back when I got started training 21 years ago, the e-collar existed, but it had just high levels, and it was really expensive. So the trainer that I worked for, if I remember, he had one or two of these collars around. And if I remember, we only used them on like police dogs. It wasn't like something for the average dog. They just couldn't, it was way too much pain and too much pressure on the dog. And so were we, 20 years ago, were we able to achieve off-leash results? Yes. Were we able to get dogs over chewing and destruction? Yes. Were we able to fix aggression and problems? Yes. So we could accomplish the same thing 21 years ago as we can accomplish now. So again, well, why do it then? Why pay a couple $100 for this tool if you can accomplish the same thing? And here's the meat and potatoes of what I'm getting at. It really boils down to ease of use for the handler, timing. We're able to get there so much easier, so much less pressure on the dog. And so to get to that off-leash level of training without an e-collar might take way more repetitions and therefore, more cumulative stress on the dog. And I'd rather have the stress be lower. Or, I may need to be a little bit firmer with a leash when I could be a little bit more gentle with an e-collar. And so, cumulatively what we see is a lot less pressure, a lot less stress in using the electric collar than in not using the electric collar. Now, it's not right for every dog, it's not right for every situation. And this is why it's important to really go with somebody that knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing and has done this a lot. So it's not like this cure-all. It's not like, ooh, we got an electric collar, everything's going to be fine now. It's just we can get to our destination easier, with less stress, less pressure, more humane, and more complete. And again, there's that side of the story that says, well, I just train using treats and toys and I can get there too. I'd love to see that. I've still yet to see, a trainer that doesn't use some sort of consequence that's able to achieve really great results over and over and over with a wide variety of dogs as far as fixing aggression, off-leash obedience, things like that. It just doesn't happen. And they'll talk about theory and look, here's this study and this book says this. I don't care about theory. I care about what works in the real world. And I've been able to train thousands of dogs now and have seen what works in the real world and have seen the difference between a dog that understands consequence and a dog that doesn't. So, like I say, this is a little bit longer of a podcast, a little bit longer of a video today. But it's a question I've actually received from, potential clients and other folks in the not too distant past here on, hey, why do you use that? And to summarize everything that I've said before, it's easier on the dog, it's easier on the owner, we get to our location faster. It's kind of like saying, hey, why are you using power steering on your car? Can't you steer your car without it? Yeah, I can steer a car without power steering. I don't love it. It's not as fun. Or, why use a sharp knife when you've got a dull knife right over there to cut your potatoes or your steak or whatever? Well, I could use a dull knife. It's harder, it's not as easy. And so the electric collar does simplify things, and it does simplify it for me, but most importantly, it simplifies it for the dog. So the dog can get more freedom, get over their problems much easier with so much less cumulative stress and so much less challenge. And so if I can do that for dogs, my dog, other dogs, why wouldn't I? And so like I say, it's kind of a no-brainer for us. We've helped thousands of dogs now in the e-collar and seen just amazing results. Can you make mistakes with it? Yeah. You can make mistakes with any tool, treats included, toys included. It's easier to screw up a dog with an e-collar, so find someone that can teach it, that knows exactly what they're doing. But if you've got that knowledge, you're going to be able to achieve so much more than you could with any other tool. So if you take it away, can we still train dogs? Absolutely. But, I'll still be driving my car if someone takes away the power steering, but, it's easier with the power steering, so let's do that.